For those of you tuning in for the first time, this program is designed to give you tips and answers and insights about the wonderful world of spirituality, the spiritual awakening process, tapping into your intuition, psychic phenomena, and character building. And today we are going to speak with our friend, Michelle. She's a gifted intuitive, a spiritual teacher, and a psychic medium. And Marie and we're so excited because we get to pick Michelle's brain on what it's like to be an intuitive spiritual teacher and a psychic medium. And we're going to touch on questions such as, like, how does a medium connect with spirit guides and our deceased loved ones, and what are the different feelings and ways that Michelle may get information during readings, such as clairaudience, clairscentience, clairvoyance, and clairgustance. Like, how does she get the information so that she then transfers it and gives it to the person that she's reading for? And Michelle, before we get started, is there anything else that you would like to expand on regarding what you do?
Yeah, I would just like to add, Molly, that I'm actually an evidential medium. And what that means is that when spirit communicates, they will bring through actual names, dates, birthdays, perhaps things in the readings, the client's house, so that the reading will know that this is their loved one present. They're very rarely symbolic readings. And then also I would just add just my message and my purpose as a psychic evidential medium, and that is that to let people know that there is no death. There is only transition. And we, as a culture, typically we fear death, and there's nothing to fear. We're actually here, I think, as I call it, the University of Earth, I guess. We're out of school learning, and we go back to where we came from. That was our home, and it's a beautiful place. So that's just part of my message that I like to let people know about as well.
Great. I think that's a beautiful explanation of that, because a lot of people are afraid of death. So I think that's awesome that by going to a medium, you really can help give people an insight into this other side of why it's not a scary thing. It's just another transition. And I know we have so many things to talk to you about today, and we're so totally excited about this. So, Marie, why don't you ask I think you had a question for her to start out with. You go ahead, and I will type some information into our chat room for our listeners. You can type some questions into the chat room for us today, and we'll try to answer them. So go ahead, Marie.
All right. Well, Michelle, thanks for joining us today. And my question for you is, how did a former probation officer become involved in becoming a psychic medium?
Oh, that's a great question, Marie. Thank you. I wouldn't have believed it. Actually, I would like to say, I guess I was raised by a psychic and a healer. My mom is a psychic of many years, an energy worker, so I have that influence in my life. My first reading actually was at about 9 years old, and I just always remember feeling very intuitive and having a really good sense for people and a situation. I don't have the story of seeing spirits as a young child. I just always have felt highly intuitive and connected spiritually. And then, I'd say about 12 years ago, I really discovered this voracious appetite for the metaphysical, and I just opened the door at that point and read. And I remember my first book was actually Lessons from the Light by George Anderson, and I found that he's the father of psychic mediums, one of the very well-known ones out there today. And I just was so moved by that, and that opened the door, and I just read more and more, and then I went through a Psychic Institute modeled after Berkeley Psychic Institute, and then from that I moved on to a mediumship school, and I went through that, and things just flourished, and it almost feels exponential, the growth that came. And interestingly enough, my very first book that I read in Michelle's program was also Lessons from the Light by George Anderson. So I thought, well, I am really where I need to be. So that's kind of my story.
That's great. That's Marie and I talk about this all the time, how absolutely cool the whole process is when you're really on a path of learning, and when you're on the right path, like one book will take you to a person or another book that takes you to a person or an event, and it's just a really great route of learning, and all this stuff opens up for you, and everything that happens you go, okay, I get that happened for that reason. It's very, very cool. Now, when you're doing a reading, Michelle, how are you connecting? Well, maybe what we can do is, before you explain or answer this question, can you explain to everyone listening, like, what is the difference between, like, clairvoyance and clairaudience, the different ways that people get information when they're doing readings?
Absolutely. Another great question. So we have 7 different, what we call clairs. We have first clairvoyance, and that allows us, that's our ability to see pictures and images. It's much like maybe a daydream that anyone might have, where you kind of take yourself to another place and you see these images before you. So that's clairvoyance. And then we have clairaudience, which is the ability to hear. And that can either be inside your head or outside your head. Every medium, every person is different. You might hear the voice within or without. And then there's clairgustance. That's the ability to taste. People actually, some mediums will taste maybe lemon or salty or fishy flavor or something. Messages come through that way. There's also clairaudience, or we can call it clairolfactory, and that's the ability to smell. And then claircognizance comes from our 7th chakra. That's our where we connect with our own highest self, and that's clear knowing. And clairscentience is the ability to feel in the body from spirit. If I, for example, perhaps I'm doing a reading on someone, maybe they have passed tragically or took their own life, then I will have a specific sensation in a specific part of my body to tell me that that's how that spirit passed. Or if they're having issues in their stomach, I'll feel that in my stomach. And then the last clair is clairkinesthesia, and that's the clear touch. And you can think of that as maybe butterfly kisses, to take the words of my friend and mentor, Michelle Fletcher. And that's actually spirit touch. So if you've ever been somewhere where you felt like the top of your head was touched or your shoulder, that's an outside feeling where spirit has come and actually touched you on the outside. And now that's not to be confused with psychometry, which is the ability to actually hold an object that you're touching and then get images from it. The two are different, and sometimes they get a little confused. But, so those are all different ways where messages and images will come through from spirit.
That's great, because that clears a lot of stuff up for some people, because I know when things are opening up for people, some people might just be clairvoyant, some might just kind of maybe get messages and hear things, or someone might smell things, and some people might be able to have all of those skills. So it's good you went over all of that, because it really makes it clear for some people that just are starting out on this path, so they can understand how all these different messages can come in. Marie, what was your question that you had that you were going to ask Michelle?
Yeah, because I had it's like a twofold question. One, is everyone able to talk to their dead relatives through you? And do we get to decide who we can talk to, or do they decide who comes through on a specific reading?
Everyone does have spirit around them. I have not been through a reading where I have not been able to connect with a loved one. We do not, though, get to choose who it is that comes through. Unfortunately, spirit decides. They know when, where, why, and how. They know when the reading's coming, and they choose that time. And they come for a lot of different reasons. They might come to say that they're sorry. They might come to guide us with issues upcoming. They might come to give a congratulations, to say hello. They come for lots of different reasons. And I'm sorry, I think I forgot the last part of your question. Or did I get it all?
No, you you did. Basically, the first part was, is everyone able to talk to their dead relatives through you?
Okay. Yes. There's always spirit around people who come through. There's never, in all the readings I've done, there's never not been a spirit there for them. So
wow.
I'm happy to say that. Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing that, Michelle, that you said, which I thought was so totally cool, is that because we're all dealing with energy here, even before you sit down and do a reading with someone, like, for example, I'll give the example of when Michelle did a reading for me, which was totally cool. Our friend Tina was like, we have a friend, Michelle, that wants to do a reading. Are any of us in the group, are we able to have her do a reading for us? And I committed to that morning. It just happened to work out for me. So it was like, I don't know, Michelle, I can't remember, but I think I said yes at maybe 9 or 9:30 that morning, said, yeah, that'll work out. Well, my grandmother had come to Michelle the night before and was already getting prepared to give information because she already knew that I was going to commit to tomorrow to do this reading before I even knew I was going to commit to do that reading. I mean, that's why I think this is so awesome and cool and fun. Totally fun. So they know that you're... Yeah, they know that you're doing a reading before you even know you're doing a reading, which is cool. So what's been your most satisfying reading so far that you've come across?
Well, yeah, I have to say that they are all satisfying. They're just wonderful. Each and every one is unique in its own way. But I guess I did have a reading a few weeks ago where a grandfather came in for this woman, and it was a bit emotionally charged, and she really did want to connect with him, and he did come through. They don't always, but he did, and he was able to be a wonderful communicator. Not all spirits are, and he brought through just beautiful evidential information repeatedly, and it was a very healing and powerful connection for her. And it's those kinds of readings that are healing for the readee that move me the most from within. And I get done with those readings, and I just have to sit in appreciation, and it just even brings a tear to my eye, and I just thank the Supreme Being that I can be this humble messenger and be the conduit for spirit and to bring to clients and readees and such. And so those are the most satisfying. And to just kind of nail one and say which is the most, I just don't think I can do that. They're all so wonderful. They really are.
Yeah, and that's very cool. And I'm sure along the same lines too, there's readings that are more difficult, but of course all the information that comes through is very necessary for that person at that time, whether it's a light message or maybe a message about transitioning or change or something too, I suppose.
Sure. Yes, readings can, of course, be difficult as well. I would say, I don't really feel like I've ever, again, had a difficult reading. What makes a reading difficult, though, and there's just a subtle difference there, is when a person maybe isn't really open. Maybe they have a little bit of a closed mind. For example, they might say, oh, gosh, I want to connect with my grandmother. I hope I connect with my grandmother. I hope, And so that energy, that expectation energy, actually will hinder the communication. And then as a result, grandmother may not come through. So there's that presents that sometimes will make a reading a little bit of a challenge. And then also, if a person is, naturally some readings will be very emotional, which was as the case with this reading I mentioned just a few moments ago. But if they're overly emotional or highly charged, that can actually wobble communication too. And the reason for that is because I'm human too. I'm human, and so I will feel their emotion and go. Generally, when I read, I'm in my head and I'm focused, but I'll drop down to my heart chakra and I'll feel the compassion and the empathy, and so that wobbles the communication. So it's so I have to be real careful to make sure I'm staying focusing in my head, and that the not allowing the emotional energy of the reading to take over.
And I suppose what you were saying, too, before, which is a big part of the whole spirituality thing, is this isn't about control, it's about allowing. And when you're saying, if you're doing a reading, I want this person to come through, I want, that's us trying to control that situation instead of allowing the correct spirit that's supposed to come through at the time to give you that divine message. And when we allow that, really incredible things happen. Before we continue on, I do want to kind of say one of the ways that Michelle and I connected was through a friend of ours named Tina. And as I had mentioned earlier, Michelle did a reading for me. This was back in October. And I want to give you a little story here, because this is how we can bless all of each other by this incredible spiritual gift that we all have, that we can give to each other by just looking out for everyone and having love in our hearts. Michelle did a reading for me. My husband and I were heading out of town, and she was saying, your father is here, and they're saying that you're packing for a trip, which we were. We had our suitcases upstairs ready to go, and she had said that my father knew I had packed a rosary of my grandmother's in my suitcase. So, I mean, the information, what she was saying at the beginning of the show to give you validation that you are speaking to one of your loved ones so that you know there's validation in the information that you're getting is correct, because the universe only deals in the truth. And at the end of this reading, which was very incredible, and Michelle just came, my father came through Michelle with just incredible information. She had said, I'm seeing a breast cancer ribbon, and it's for, one of your family members, and it was actually for my sister Carolyn, who wants us to talk about this today because this has really helped her life so much. She's so grateful for this. I had mentioned to my sister after the reading that our father wanted her to go get a follow-up mammogram, that there's, something going on. She went to a regular doctor, had a mammogram. They said, yes, there is something. They did a series of 5 more mammogram pictures, and they said, there was nothing. That must have just been a crinkle, on your breast, so don't worry about it. And then I had another trusted friend medium that said, no, have her go and get a thermal mammogram. This is extremely important. My father came through again. So this is about not discounting information and going with stuff that's just really important. And she since has had a thermal mammogram, and she wants everyone to know that thermal mammograms are not very well known out there. But it's vitally important because the information that came from this thermal mammogram is that, yes, there is something going on, and it will not be, shown on a regular mammogram probably for, let's say, maybe 2 years. But it's at a stage right now where it's dissolvable. But if she continued to not change her diet and change patterns in her life regarding her health, that this would become an issue. And so my father has really, through Michelle, opened up an incredible window into information that we would never have been allowed through the medical field. So this is the blessing that going to a trusted medium can give you. It's just so absolutely incredible. So that's why we one of the reasons, there's many, but one of the reasons why we wanted to do the show today, because just the great info that's come through with Michelle. And Marie, what you had a question after me, I think, didn't you?
I did, yes. Michelle, after, spending a lot of time with your clients, what have you learned from their spirit guides that are some of the most important things we can all learn in regards to valuing our relationships or forgiving others or just being good people in general?
Yeah. So let's see, a couple of different things that I can say here. I guess the first thing would be releasing the ego. And ego is all of the feelings of fear and doubt or anger, resentment, or jealousy if that presents, not being able to forgive. That's all just ego. And we just, we don't want to leave the earth with all of that. We came to learn and get through that. So, and how do you release ego? Well, meditation, of course. And through meditation, that helps assist you on a journey of connecting with your highest self. And when you connect with your higher self, it just changes you. And those things they just dissolve, and they aren't with you anymore. That's one thing. And then I would say, just to make a realization that, we are all connected, and everything happens for a reason. There is no coincidence. We're learning and growing together from each other. I couldn't be where I am without all the people helping me, and you couldn't either. None of us can. We're here together. And so when you grasp that, I think that changes us as well. We really are actually energetically all connected together. And then just the last thing I think I would say that I learned from the many readings and this journey is really, in the words of Eckhart Tolle, live in the moment. And so many wonderful mediums and light workers out there say this in their own way, and it's so powerful and true. I think it's so important to live in the moment and talk maybe, for example, from your heart. When you're sitting at the dinner table, I catch myself sort of thinking about occasionally what I've got to do tomorrow, and I'm not in the moment. And with family and talking from my heart with them, and so I think that's real important for all of us to remember to do, to help to just like as you said, be good people in general, and help our relationships grow.
That's great, and you're talking about how important family is and being in the moment. And we did have a question in our chat room where, and I'm sure you get this question a lot with people that come to see you with regards to maybe family members that have passed over. Like, how do they give us signs that that they're still with us? Like, can they give us specific messages instead of just going to you, which is obviously great because you have a lot more insight into that. But is there a way where they can also connect with their own family members too?
I love that question. And the number one way that people can connect with their own family members is through dreams. And you will know that it is your family member because the dream will be very vivid and colorful. Family members don't come through, sad or dark. So if you're having a dream of your family member and, seeing them in a gloomy situation out standing in the rain, it's not them. That's probably more about your fears. But so the dream will come through very powerfully and very vivid, and that's the best way. And you can just say at night before you go to bed out loud or write it in a journal, I want to connect with so-and-so. And it may not happen the first night, but just stay with it, and it will come. They do hear you. They absolutely hear you. That's the number one way. Also, energy, electricity is an easy conduit for spirit. So when lights flicker, computers flicker, perhaps you've had the fire alarm go off, those are all messages from spirit. Smell, if you're smelling something that reminds you, if you smell the cologne that your grandmother wore or the way your grandfather smelled, that's coming through with a message. And then you also might just feel their presence. You might just feel their essence. Trust in those intuitive feelings because that is them, and they are coming through, and you can do it on your own.
Yeah, that's really great. And Marie, Michelle basically answered my complete question I was going to ask very effortlessly and beautifully. So I don't even need to ask the second part of my questions because she already answered that. So why don't you go ahead and ask her your question?
Awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to connect with you, Michelle, for a reading after the show. Can you explain to them why it is possible to do a reading for someone across the country or the world via Skype, phone, or email and still get the same results? In the past, I thought you had to be right in front of the person when you're doing a reading, but that's not correct. Correct?
You're right. You are absolutely right, and I have a really cute, funny little story about that. So the mediumship and psychic work and readings of this sort, it's all about energy, and there is no time, there is no space, there is no distance in energy. All you need is intention. You need the intention to complete the reading and connect on an energetic level, and you need permission. So always have to have a person say that it's okay, that, I would never go into a person's space and do a reading without their permission. So those are the two main things. And my funny story, I remember when I was just first learning and doing readings, and my teacher at the time put a teddy bear on the chair in front of us. And we were supposed to, we were reading someone that was distant, but the teddy bear was in the chair symbolizing that person. And I thought to myself, oh, my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? I couldn't imagine reading this teddy bear here in the place of this person that I believe was in Arizona or somewhere. But, I look back at that and I laugh now because I realize that it is just about energy and intention. And that teddy bear story, it's always brings a good little chuckle. And we actually ended up having just a wonderful reading. So, yeah, there's just no time or space. And readings, whether they're email or chat, telephone, they're all, the connection is just as good in any format.
Yeah, one of my teachers said it's just establishing, kind of like your cable connection. Once you establish that, you're fine. You can connect with anyone anywhere, which I find just fascinating. I just find that just so miraculous. It's very cool. And before we run out of time, Michelle, can you give our listeners some quick tips that people can do before they have a reading with you to ensure that they have a successful, connection and a successful reading?
Sure, yeah. So the most important thing, I think we touched on this a little bit, is just to come with a real open mind. And so what I like to do to prepare people for that is to just, and everyone will establish their own little routine. That by no means do they have to follow this, but I like to just have them sit quietly for a few moments, tell the spirit they wish to connect with that they intend communication. Spirit will already know, but tell them anyway. And then maybe recall and think about past memories, smells, traits, events, or places they may have traveled with their loved one. And then here's that intention again. Set that intention for a joyful, expectation-free session, being ready to accept whatever comes through. And then be certain and confident that your loved one has heard you and, will hopefully come through. And if not, that's all right, too. And that's pretty much it. And then if they're just in a quiet place and where they were uninterrupted, of course, that's real helpful. So those are just a few suggestions, but everyone does kind of find their way with it generally.
Well, great.
That's
great.
You. And then, Marie, you had a tip of the week that I think Michelle talked about just a little bit, but it's such a great tip that Michelle has. So let's close with that for people so we leave them with that, and I'll do my quote of the week after you.
Michelle says the easiest way to connect with your loved one is through your dreams. Dreams bring very powerful spiritual messages. Before you go to bed, tell your loved one your desire to visit with them. This is really all you need to do. When you least expect it, they will come to you, and you will know because your dream of them is especially vivid, and there's no mistaking that your loved one has indeed come to visit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's just a fabulous tip because it's something that everyone can do, and you might not even think of it. But now that we put that out there for you, everyone should, make that a little goal to do before you go to bed at night and see if that works for you. And then I have a quote of the week that says, books are but waste paper unless we spend in action the wisdom we get from thought asleep. When we are weary of the living, we may repair to the dead who have nothing of peevish pride or design in their conversation. And that's a quote by William Butler Yeats. And what he's basically talking about is what Michelle was saying before is, when our spirit guides or relatives come through in these readings and, it's not about the ego. It's not about anything other than truth and love and forgiveness and compassion. That's kind of what they want the information for us to come away with from these readings. We're just talking about energy here, so she does not need to be in front of you. A lot of us, me as well, thought you had to be right in front of someone and they had to hold your hand to get information with regards to, psychic information. That just isn't the case.